Hi, I'm Mark Sleboda, and this is The Real Politik. The decision reached and announced by overall theater commander General Armageddon Surovikin and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu to withdraw Russian forces across the Dnepr River, abandoning Kherson City to Kiev regime forces, despite the fact that the Russian defense lines in the area had so far thrown back every Kiev regime assault with heavy casualties, is undoubtedly a controversial one and resulted in a tidal wave of the gnashing of teeth, pulling of hair, beating of chest, doom and glooming, and cries of betrayal by Russian and pro-Russian media and commentators, both expert and armchair alike, as well as raucous jubilation and celebration of this great victory by their Western and Kiev Putsch regime counterparts. It was undoubtedly a tough decision, long planned and well executed, which, from hindsight, we can now see the Surovikin was directly referring to in his very first press conference upon becoming overall commander of the SMO in Ukraine on October 18th, when he described the situation at the Southern Front as tense, and that we will not exclude taking the most difficult decisions. So, let's take a look at some of the pros and cons being argued from the Russian military perspective, points that undoubtedly weighed heavily in the decision. The pros. Number one, supply and logistics concerns. No longer having to rely on pontoons and bridges that were being targeted by artillery and rockets every other day to supply what was a 20 to 30,000 strong Russian defensive force in Kherson City. Number two, the manpower needed to defend the Dnepr River will be much less than needed to defend Kherson. Number three, thus freeing up manpower and other assets for the slow, grinding offensive in the Donbass. Or, as U.S. Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor has argued in a recent interview about Russia freeing them up for what he claims is a planned massive winter offensive elsewhere meant to end the war in one fell swoop. Number four, securing Russian forces' flank with the Dnepr River, bridges across it now blown in the retreat, a significant geographic barrier. Number five, narrowing the front lines down even further, which favors the side with less manpower, still Russia, at least until the reservists are all fully retrained, equipped, and arrive in theater, and more artillery. Number six, prevents the destruction of Kherson City and the lives lost of the approximately 100,000 civilians, half the population, that didn't want to or couldn't be evacuated, that would have been incurred in a tough urban defense of the city. Number seven, the much-discussed threat of the Kiev regime succeeding in their repeated attempts to destroy the Kakhovka Reservoir Dam, flooding much of the city and area, leading to massive civilian casualties and Russian troops on the right bank of the Dnepr being completely cut off and isolated from the rest of the forces and resupply for days. And it would end the water supply to Crimea through the Crimean Canal. Number eight, Russian force preservation. This prolongs the current stalemate situation until the Russian mobilized reservists arrive in theater. So, now the cons. Number one, the massive political damage and humiliation of losing the capital city of one of the just recognized new regions of Russia. Kiev regime troops are already mockingly tearing down billboards around the city that have the slogan, "Russia here forever." Kiev regime force preservation as two. They would have taken very heavy casualties in trying to take the city. Three, the Kiev regime now also frees up manpower and assets which will be used in the Donbass or in Zaporozhye. They will be used somewhere else. Number four, Kiev regime forces also now have a secured flank on the Dnepr. Five, the loss of the strategic bridgehead for Russia across the Dnepr that won't be easy to get back, ruling out any move on Nikolaev and Odessa for the foreseeable future. Six, the potential of increased support from the West in aid and equipment as the Kiev regime is now seen as winning, or at least not a lost cause, to throw more money and weapons at. 7. Ranged systems like the HIMARS can now potentially reach targets in northern Crimea, including fire control of roads and supply lines in and out of the peninsula. Number 8. The potential threat of domestic political unrest in Russia. Number 9. The international reputation and perspective of Russia may take a hit. Russia's allies and those states still refusing to participate in Western sanctions may start to see Russia as losing and a lost cause. 10. Kiev regime atrocities and the subsequent war crimes propaganda blaming it all on Russia, on the remaining civilians in Kherson City. The now usual chilling Kiev regime announcements about cleansing and mass text messages have already gone out asking people to report collaborators, many of which will undoubtedly face torture and summary executions, as happened in Bucha and the Kharkov region, people Russia had sworn to protect as their own. Number 11, a morale boost to Kiev regime forces and a morale loss among Russian troops. So, now you do the weighing, summing math, and come to your own armchair conclusion about whether this decision to withdraw from Kherson was a tragic but necessary call or a terrible mistake for the Russian military.